Yo, welcome back to another video. Now this video we are going to be going over the brand new Worldline unit, that being the UMAZING or the Horsegirls. They are a pretty cool unit indeed. Now this is going to be another post commentary video because these guys are kind of complicated and I didn't want to make the video any longer than it actually needed to be. So with that being said, let's get straight into going over this unit. So starting us off, the Horsegirls are 1,000 to place down. They are a 1 placement regardless of monarch or not, and they have passion typing. When placing down the unit for the first time, you get introduced to a UI that allows you to select between one of 4 different horses: Concert, AU Boat, Scientist, or Joy. Each of these different horses have a different stat specialization that will come into play when distributing stats in the unit itself, which I'll talk about later on. But for this showcase, I will always be picking Concert as my showcase horse. The total cost of maxing out the Horsegirls is 131,000 yen. Going over the damages, the traitless damage is 144.8 thousand damage at max upgrade. It is 579.3 thousand damage for Monarch with Z+ stats. Moving on to the passives, we have our second passive because we've already looked at the first passive. It is Moody. When you pick a stat, that stat chance to fail increases. If the stat fails, the mood decreases. The mood increases stat growth, increases chance to succeed, and spending 1 action point to rest allows you to restore your mood. So what this passive is referring to is the Horsegirl racing ability. When you click it, you get opened up to a UI that may look a little bit confusing when you look at it first, but it is pretty simple to understand. If you have played UMAZING Pretty Derby, I guess you would be able to know kind of the gist of what this does. We get introduced to 4 different stats that we can upgrade. We have a mood, we have action points, we have a rest button, and we also have an auto upgrade button. One thing to note, mood is the most important thing out of all of this menu when it comes to upgrading your stats. You want the best mood possible, which is great mood. You have 4 action points that you can spend into stats or to increase your mood. You cannot stack your action points. You can only have a maximum of 4 per wave. If you have not spent all of your action points, the next time the wave rolls over, you'll only be back at 4 action points. The auto upgrade button will automatically feed points into your specialized stat until it is maxed. From there, it won't distribute any more points into the other stats. This will take around 8 to 9 waves to fully max out a singular specialized stat. Alright, now we will move on to the mood and why it is the most important thing when it comes to increasing your stats on your horses. You first start off at normal mood. Normal, bad, and awful mood. All 3 of these moods have a base point gain of 3 and all have a chance to fail on your first upgrade of a stat. Moving on to good mood, after you've rested a singular time, you now can have a base stat growth of 4 and your first chance to upgrade a stat has a 0% chance to fail. Moving on to the great mood, this gives you a 5 base stat growth and also has a 0% chance to fail on your first attempt to upgrade that stat. The other thing to note is your specialized stat itself. That will give an additional 3 stats for that specialized stat for whatever one that you have specialized in. So for example, I've specialized in speed. I am at a great mood, and when I go to upgrade my speed, I'll gain 8 points instead of the normal 5 for the other stats. And the final passive is World Champion. When you max out all 4 stats, you gain plus 100% damage and you run 2 times faster. To be able to max out all 4 stats, this requires a minimum of 37 waves worth of action points to be able to get all stats to 200%, and this is only if you haven't failed a single chance to upgrade a stat. Alright, first things first, when it comes to actually spending your action points into your stats, what are the most prioritized things to go after? Like I said at the start, mood is definitely the most important. If you do not have a great mood, you always want to rest to get to a great mood. And then from there, I would say the next most important stat would be your speed stat. Then after that, the next 2 stats that are pretty much equal, it all is reliant whether you have a lot of money or not on the stage, is your cost and your damage stat. This is pretty much dependent on if you have a lot of money or you have little money. If you have a lot less money, then you want to go into your cost stat. If you have a lot more money, then you want to go into your damage stat. And then after, the 4th stat that you would want to go into is pretty much your critical stat. If you can reach 100% crit stat with a good burb easily, then maybe look towards investing into a little bit of crit because that will help out quite a lot. Otherwise, crit doesn't really do too much until you actually have gotten 100 points points into it, because then you have a guaranteed 25% increased damage coming from your critical stat. When it comes to a infinite game mode, then it doesn't really matter which stat you prioritize in going into first, because eventually you will get all 4 of them maxed out after a certain amount of time. So this is only a priority when it comes to limited game modes and what stats you want to go after first. So with that being said, let's get into the actual distributions that you can go about putting your action points into. So for our first distribution method, we have our 4 stat point distribution. First thing to note, I am going to be looking at it from before wave 1, at wave 1 and wave 2, all the way up to wave 15 worth of stat points. Now on our first placement of our UMAZING, I will be putting 2 points into our mood, and I will be putting 2 points into our specialized stat. This will stay consistent throughout all of the distribution methods, so just keep that in mind going forward. So if we were to place our Horsegirls down before wave 1, this means that we'll have a total of 60 stat points that we can put across our 4 stats after we've done our first initial stat point distribution. Going over all 4 stats, we'll have 15 points in each stat and 17 points in our specialized stat. This gives us 75 points in our stats and 136 points in our specialized stat. If we were to place on wave 1, this will be 56 points, giving us 14 stat points across every single one of our stats and 16 into our specialized stat. This will give us an average of 70 between all 4 of them and 128 for our specialized stat. If you were to place on wave 2, we have 52 stat points that we can work with, giving us an average of 13 stat points to put into our non-specialized stats and 15 into our specialized stat. This gives us 65 points in our non-specialized stats and 120 in our specialized stat. Alright, moving on to our next distribution. This is our 3 stat point distribution. Same thing goes here for our first 4 points that we do have. 2 go into our mood and 2 go into our specialized stat. If you were to place before wave 1, we have 20 action points we can put into our stats and 22 action points we can put into our specialized stat. This gives us 100 points for our stats and 176 points for our specialized stat. If we were to place on wave 1, we have 18 action points for our stats and 20 action points for our specialized stat. Plus we have 2 additional action points to place anywhere in those stats as well. This gives us 90 points for our stats and 160 points for our specialized stat, with 10 extra stat points we can put where we choose. If we were to place wave 2, we have 17 action points for our stats and 19 action points for our specialized stat, plus 1 additional action point to put anywhere. This gives us 85 points for our stats and 152 points for our specialized stat, with the additional 5 points to put anywhere we choose as well. Next up, we have another 3 stat distribution, but we'll always be putting our extra point per wave into our specialized stat. So for pre-wave 1 placement, we'll be getting 18 action points to put in our stats, and we're getting 25 action points to put in our specialized stat. Plus we have an additional 1 action point to spend anywhere else. This gives us 90 points in our normal stats and 200 points in our specialized stat, with 5 additional points to put anywhere else, like I said before. Moving on, if we were to place on wave 1, we'll have 16 action points to put into our normal stats and 25 action points to put into our specialized stat, with an additional 1 action point to place anywhere else. This gives us 80 stat points for our normal stats, and this gives us 200 points for our specialized stat, with 5 points to put anywhere else, like I said before. And if you were to place on wave 2, you have 14 action points to spend into your stats, and you have 25 action points to spend into your specialized stat, with an additional 1 action point to spend anywhere else. This gives us 75 points for our normal stats and 200 points for our specialized stat, with 5 extra points to spend anywhere else. Alright, and to end things off, I am going to do a little bit of live commentary. So, when it comes to the DPSs for the horses themselves, it is a little bit of a weird scenario because it is going to be different for everyone depending on what your speed stat is. So it is very easy to understand what the DPS is going to be once they're fully maxed, and also once they have like max speed, max damage. But like when you're building up to build up all of their stats, it is a little bit variable in that sense. So it is a bit harder to kind of give you an exact DPS stat for all of those. So what I am going to do is just kind of go over the damage numbers of everything that I do have here and then go over the DPSs for those. So for traitless damage, the base damage is 144.8 thousand damage. Like I said before, if you were to max out the damage stat at 200, you'll get 434.4 thousand damage. If you have the speed maxed out at 200 on the planet Namek map, it will take 11.3 seconds to run the entire length. This means for traitless, you have around 38.4 thousand DPS if you have 200 speed and 200 damage. Moving on, if you were to get world champion, which is having all 4 stats maxed out, you go up to 1.3 million damage, and this is including the crit damage into that, and you'll be running the track every 5.5 seconds. This gives traitless a total DPS of a world champion on planet Namek map of 236.9 thousand DPS. So it is pretty decent if you are able to actually reach world champ on your UMAZING. Moving on to the monarch damage. Base monarch damage has 579.3 thousand damage. If you were to have your damage stat maxed out and your speed stat maxed out, you have 1.73 million damage, and it takes 11.3 seconds to run the track. So you end up having a DPS of 153.8 thousand DPS. If you were to become a world champion, that jumps all the way up to 5.21 million damage, and it takes 5.5 seconds to run the length of the planet Namek map. So it end up giving you a total DPS of 947.9 thousand DPS on planet Namek if you are a world champion with your UMAZING. So as you can see, world champion definitely does significantly boost up the DPS compared to a non-world champion. So when it comes to the UMAZINGs, they are definitely king when it comes to infinite game modes. They are going to be doing consistently crazy amounts of DPS that will always hit every single enemy as soon as they do run through the entire track. So they are a really good unit to pick up for those infinite game modes that we might be getting or that we do currently have in the game. When it comes to the limited game modes like just wave 15, 20, 30, 35, maybe not so much. They still perform very well. It's just not as insane as they can do in an infinite game mode when they can become world champions. With that being said, that is probably where I am going to end off this video. I think these guys are an amazing pickup. If you do not have them, they are a great passion unit. So yeah, appreciate it if you guys have watched this far through the video. See ya.